Here's my second video, but this one is on saps, not spring-loaded blackjacks. And these are a variety of different saps that I've made. The majority of them, I'd have to say that I've made. There are a couple that I bought from different people, and I'll point those out when we go over those. But let's just start here on the very end. I'm going to do close-ups now of all these. This is an old, very old style jack. One of the first ones I ever made. It's a copy of an old jack. If you look very closely at my stitching, you can't even hardly see it. I take a lot of pride. I used very heavy leather to make this. It's filled with steel shot and a spring in it, but it's really not like a traditional blackjack in that this is not as flexible. The next one I did trade with a friend who was a police officer. This is what's called a Gonzales 247, I believe. And these are no longer made, and this bloody thing is so thick and so heavy. The stitching's not great, but it's a collector's item. This next one I actually made like a little brother to it. I made it out of Stingray. You can look very closely at the seams on it. Now, one thing that I started learning to do in the beginning, I didn't do this, is I started not putting rivets. Most people will put a rivet here and here. My handles actually go the length of the inside, and it's sewed, and I cut a groove to hide that so you don't notice any of that. But the point is, you don't have any unsightly rivet in there. It's still strong. It's tied with very, very, very strong nylon, glued and all hand sewn. And as you can see with this, I covered up the stitching. Here is the smaller version of this. I made a little tiny version of this to fit, I call it like a little tiny back pocket sap. Again, this is made out of Stingray also. You can see a little bit of the molding there, of the way that I mold the leather by pressing it into mold the leather around the actual shape of the jack. This is one I bought. I buy these occasionally if I can find them really, really cheap. Because this is a JP long slugger. I buy these just to get an idea of how they used to make them in the old days, and to see, really, honestly, most of them are made out of pretty inferior. I think the guys today, Foster and Dewar and all these different people, D2, they make much better jacks than the ones of days of old. This is another one, really nice though, that I got online by total accident. I think it would have been gone in a second. And again, I didn't like these rivets always sticking out, so I figured out a way to sew, as I said, in the handle and hide all that. This one I just decided to make. I made it out of Kydex, which are what gun sheaths, gun holsters are made out of. And I also tie, this is called a lanyard knot in the end. It just makes it look a little nicer. A lot of guys just, throw a piece of parachute cord around it, but I wanted this to be nice, and I made some of these for some guys that went overseas. And this is really, really, really tough, and as most people know, you use the edge when you're striking if you want to cut somebody, and this bloody thing right here will really, I would imagine it would do damage. So there's an extra Kydex in the handle, which gives it flexibility, but it's also double glued, heated, and the seams are all heated. I use a particular type of grinder and heat so that it all seals it in, and I believe it'll last forever. But it was just an idea, an original idea I came up with. I'm sure other people have too, but this is an original concept that I came up with a while back. This next one, I trained elephants for many years of my life. This is actually elephant hide. I don't know if you can catch if I turn it correctly, you can see the shape of it. I make, in particular in the beginning, I made a lot of my jacks really thick, 4, 5, 6 layers thick. And again, you can't sew these on a machine. I use a drill and drill out a drill press and drill out the holes, and then everything's hand stitched. The leather goes over top. Again, you can see the handle. There is no unsightly, or whatever you want to call it, unseemly, whatever you want to say, rivets or whatever in these. So they really come out, they're really beautiful. They're almost pieces of works of art. So that's an elephant hide one. These are a couple. There was a guy named Chaz Clements that used to make jacks. He's no longer around. He sold his company out. But these are some that I made similar to his, except the difference in mine is I went ahead and added a swivel to the end here so that it would swivel and turn around in your hand. And then, of course, I used what they call a Mexican braid or whatever on the end. But this is all packed. I wet the leather. I use a round little piece like a plunger in it. When I've got this all sewed, I run it through the end. I pour water in there, let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then I shape the jack, and then I fill it with lead, and then I let it dry. Then I go ahead and fit the swivel in there, and it's all glued and sewed, and I use the best materials that I can find to do these. And this is another one similar to Chaz's, except this one one of the first ones ever that I actually sewed on a machine. And I didn't bother to go through the lengthy process. I just laid it down, cut it real quick, and did it. This is a really unique jack. You'll never see probably another one really like it. It was made by a saddle maker, Don McLennan. He used to live down in Sun Valley, in California. And this was given to me by another elephant trainer friend of mine. This guy used to make all the stuff for circuses, for show people, that is, circus show people in our business. He made harnesses and saddles and really beautiful stuff for the movie industry and for cowboys and whatever. My friend I was fortunate enough, he gave me this, a very thin sap, but apparently this guy used to carry this all the time, I was told, and gave it to my friend when they went on a long trip one day. At any rate, that's all sewed on a machine. I made a little duplicate of it. It's not as good as his, obviously, but I made a little quick one just to see how involved it was, how he made his. This is another one I made, and of course I did some tooling on it. You know, I'm not really great at this. Probably the first effort I ever did at trying to tool or get a little better at this kind of thing and learn how to do a little bit of tooling and flowers. I just thought it was pretty, and I put a basket weave on the back. Again, you'll see no rivets. Next one I made, I carved an elephant in it. I don't know if you can see that or not. And again, I made this 3 or 4 layers thick, and it's all handmade. And finally I broke down and bought a stamp so I could stamp my stuff. This David Dewar, D2 Protection, I think is the name of his company. He makes really, really, really nice stuff. Super nice guy. He went ahead and I was looking at his and I liked his stamp, so I went ahead and broke down and bought one myself. In fact, this is a very small one that he makes and that he made for me, which was nice of him. And it's a beautiful little sap that you fit in your back pocket. And it's what's kind of neat is just how unique it is. And there I think you can see his stamp. I'll try to get a shot of it. I think you can see his stamp there. D3 Protection, I think is what it says. But he makes really nice stuff. I like to plug him because he does make really nice stuff. And I guess he has this cut out of a sheet of steel as opposed to filling it with lead. Here's a really early primitive sap that I made when I was first starting out. And of course then I got to the point where I did them like this, and eventually I did away with the rivet in the end. Here you can see a copper rivet. I just wanted to get away from any hardware being on them, but this was a Chaz Clements kind of style, I guess, and I copied his. I liked his stuff. I tried to correspond with him for a while, but I guess he got ill, and I don't think he makes them anymore. This is a long sap I made. This is really long. I put it's like a steel rod in it that's flexible, and this is like a giant killer, I guess. It's huge. But this I made, again, more or less just playing around. I'd see different styles. Different people made different things online, so I'd just try to copy things or look at what other people did. Here's another one I made. And this is, again, it's similar to this version that McClellan used to make, or whatever, that he used to make. And Don McClellan, excuse me, used to make, except I filled it with a lot more lead. Made it a lot heavier. And again, like I say, always experimenting, trying to find new ways to do different things. And again, you'll see no rivets. Lastly, here's one I made. And this one's really thick on the head because I doubled up the amount of lead that I normally use. I wanted to get away from using a large strap, because oftentimes if you want to put this in your car, you don't want to get it caught on something. Just an idea I had. Excuse me. I went ahead and there's just one loop that you can stick your thumb through or your finger through. So you'd pick up the sap like this, and if you wanted it to have a keeper so that you wouldn't lose it, you just stick your finger easily through either your index finger or your middle finger through this, and it loops around. It just you don't end up with that really large heavy loop on the end that a lot of these saps, as most of these saps have. At any rate, that's my small collection. I've sold a lot of them. I made a bunch for some fellows overseas. I can't really get into that, but I've made some for specialty people and police officers, and I just enjoyed making them. I pretty much don't do it anymore, but I just thought I'd share some of this small collection with you so you could get an idea of, I've really, tried to learn how to do this. At any rate, I hope you enjoyed viewing this.